In the desert with Jesus. I'm hoping we might be able to display, no, we can't display it, Eve's colouring. Millie's granddaughter Eve sent me the colouring sheet which I'm holding now. Can you see that or not, Ken? Yeah, okay, which is beautifully done. Desert animals. So we think today in that gospel about Jesus in the desert, and I was also thinking of the word quarantine, which of course comes from, it's like the French word 40, meaning 40, and it was the period that sailors used to have to stay isolated if they came home with various sicknesses and things, a bit longer than the present quarantine arrangements, I think. But a good opportunity to reflect, of course, and to think, just as that time that Jesus had in the desert. And in the desert, we have images and messages from God to help us. Today in our readings we have the two images of the rainbow and the voice. In our first reading, Noah hears about the covenant between God and human beings. The covenant is a promise from God. It's a promise that if human beings live in accordance with the law of God, all will be well and they will flourish. Sadly, this rarely happens for very long, and then the world suffers. It's not that God is vindictive or angry or punishing. It's just that sinful human activity causes much suffering. The rainbow is an image that we have seen much of lately. It has been displayed in windows as a way of saying thank you to medical, social care and other frontline workers. It's a symbol of hope for a brighter future. But when we see a rainbow, of course, we will always think of the flood that happened in the story of Noah, which came before the rainbow. The rainbow, as the sign of the covenant that God has with us, is a reminder that we have to look after our world better. That's part of the deal. God gives us this wonderful home. We are the caretakers. It's like a tenancy agreement. We've just been watching the Attenborough documentaries A Perfect Planet, the latest series. You may have seen them. If you haven't, they depict a world where the balance and harmony of ecosystems is being disrupted by human activity. Wildlife habitats are disappearing. We see this on our own doorstep. And temperatures are rising dangerously, especially for some of the poorest parts of the world. There is a warning, but there is still hope. In our Gospel reading, we hear about the very beginning of the ministry of Jesus, the Son of God, who comes to remind us of God's covenant love. At his baptism, Jesus hears a voice from heaven. You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. I know a man who had a very strict upbringing with a father who was often critical. It wasn't his fault, really. He was copying how his father had been. This man with the critical, stern father had some problems in his career and in his relationship later in life. And there were times then when he and his father were not speaking to each other. Eventually, this man made a new start and did well at work and found a new and happy relationship. When his father was very old and near to death, he suddenly said to the man, I'm proud of you. To have this positive affirmation from his father was very important. Now, this once stern father didn't have quite the vocabulary of God the Father in the voice from heaven in the Gospel story about Jesus and his Father, where he says how much he loves his Son and is pleased with him. Some people don't easily find those words because it's not part of their culture or they don't have the capacity. But I imagine that's what that stern father meant. In our lives, we will have varied experiences of how our families speak to us. They may be able to tell us that they love us, or they may be able to show it in other ways. There may also be some disappointments for us, like for the man I was telling you about, though there was a good ending there. Many of us have been baptised. In baptism, we recognise that we are children of God. Just as Jesus heard the voice from heaven, so God speaks to us through the words of Scripture, through the words of the church service, in the quiet prayer of our hearts. God speaks to us and says, "You are my beloved daughter or son. I am pleased with you." This is the good news, that we are loved by God. This gives us hope for the world and confidence in ourselves, self-esteem, courage, trust to work for the kingdom. Working for the kingdom. On this first Sunday of Lent, the Archbishop of Canterbury launches a report called Coming Home about the housing crisis in this country. Everyone needs a decent home that they can afford to live in. It is a scandal that so many people are in hostels because of the shortage of social housing. Is there a conflict here that you may have noticed? To be concerned about the environment, but at the same time to want more housing? There need not be. Maybe we need laws to make all new homes carbon neutral. And maybe we need more local authority investment in homes for the poorest people, most of whom are working in low-paid jobs. Maybe we don't need developers building homes to increase the buy-to-let market, which may increase generational inequality. That is, the older generation getting wealthier at the expense of younger generations. It's right for clergy to speak about injustice. There may be other solutions. Whatever you think, please hang on to the main message today. The message that we are loved by God, and that drives us to work for the kingdom by whatever means seems right to us. Thank you for listening.